This week we are talking about planning your Camino and the different levels of planning and whether you need to plan it at all. Coming right up. So this video was prompted by a comment that I read online, and I will confess right up front, if you've been on this channel for a while, you'll know, I'm an avid planner, a planning nerd. I go totally over the top with planning. But I read something online where somebody was saying, oh, it takes all the fun out of it and, just go. And I thought to myself, well, I've got my way of planning and other people have their way of planning and some don't plan at all. So let's talk about that. Do you actually need to plan your Camino at all? Why bother? And so what I thought I'd run through is the sort of different levels of planning that you might consider. And I don't know whether you noticed on the thumbnail, do make sure you get yourself a good guidebook, or there's lots of Camino apps. I love these guidebooks by John Brearley, who sadly is no longer with us. This is non-commercial, by the way. I just happen to like these guidebooks. I have no commercial interest in them. Particularly, I love the maps. But there's lots of good guidebooks out there. If you're looking at your first Camino, a good guidebook can be a great resource to help you. Okay, so do you actually need to do any planning? What extent should you do your planning? Look, it's a very personal thing. So I tend to over-plan a bit. Why do I do that? I actually enjoy the process of planning. The next best thing for me when I'm not walking a Camino is actually planning the next one. And so it's a great opportunity to watch videos, read blogs, go through the guidebooks, find out as much as I can about a particular route. I start planning the stages and so on. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about how I'm planning my next one. And if you want me to do a video on the detailed sort of planning of that, I'm more than happy to do that. But this video is more about the sort of concept of planning and how much you really need to do. So let's start off with none. Do you need to do any planning at all? Well, not really. You could turn up with a backpack with the basic essentials and walk. I suppose the only thing you would need to do is to understand how long you're going to be walking for. So, it might be that you've got a 2-week slot to be able to walk a Camino. And I've got lots and lots of videos on planning talking about this detail if you want to go and look at them. But, simplistically, if you're able to walk 25 Ks a day and you've got 10 days to walk a Camino, well, guess what? You can walk 250 Ks. If you want to finish rather in Santiago de Compostela, work 250 Ks back from that, pick a route. Portuguese, Francis, Invierno, San Abros, that's the extent really that you have to sort of go to with your planning, and you could pack a bit of gear. What's wrong with that? There's really nothing wrong with it. To my mind, I wouldn't do it that way because I'd want to understand a little bit more about the route. If I hadn't done it before, I'd want to understand a little bit more about gear and consider my gear. A lot of people on their first Camino carry way too much stuff. I did. My wife did. We're very careful now and we travel very, very light. Excuse me, itchy nose. Pat on her next Camino will be carrying about 4 kilos and I will be carrying about 6. And that's everything we need. And we'll be walking for over a month. So anyway, to get back to the levels of planning, do you need to plan at all? No, not really. If you're one of those people who loves to wing it. Turn up at a start point, follow the arrows and work it out as you go along. I would then call the next level sort of lightweight planning or medium planning, whatever you want. There, I'd be saying, look at the route in a little bit more detail. So, pick your guidebook of choice. This one is for the Camino Francis, which is 800 Ks. I generally take about 40 days to walk that. But whatever your chosen guidebook is going to help you work out where you're going to start, how many days you'll be walking, whether you want rest days. Those things are worth considering. Maybe spend a little bit more time thinking about gear. I'll talk about my level of planning in a minute. Think about the towns you're going to go through, a little bit of research, what will I see in that town? Because one of the reasons I do quite a lot of planning is I don't want to miss something. And I frequently do. But, you don't want to go sort of pass through Estella, for example, on the Camino Frances and go, what, there was a wine fountain? I didn't know about that. Yeah, the wine fountain is just the other side of the town. You wouldn't want to, walk over Alto del Perdón without knowing, for example, that there's an alternative route off to the left which will take you to a wonderful old church at Unate. Little bits of research can inform you about some of the things you might see along the way, some of the things that you might want to check out. And probably at this level of planning, I'd start thinking about where you might want to stay, particularly in the first few days. So, for example, if you were walking the Camino Frances in anywhere close to a popular time of year, I would say you'd want to book your first few days accommodation. The people who love to wing it, by all means wing it. I just keep hearing horror stories about those first few days on the Frances, with people struggling to find accommodation unless it's out of peak season. When is peak season? May through to about September almost. So yeah, I generally say plan out as far as Pamplona. Maybe another reason for doing a degree of planning is to think about your budget. So you might be, very comfortable to travel light, just stay in communal albergues, municipals, they're going to be the cheapest, that kind of stuff, and wing it. Maybe if you want different styles of accommodation, you want some private accommodation now and again, a little bit of research there is going to help you work out some of the costs. You can start to put your budget together, that kind of stuff. So that's another reason to do a little bit of planning. And then we have, I'll call it the final level. I could probably talk about 6 levels of planning here, but we've got, none, some sort of light planning, and then let's call it the heavy planning, which is where I sit. And I go nuts. Maybe one day I'll show you my planning spreadsheet. It's a thing of wonder. I'd be somewhat embarrassed to show it, I think. There is so much detail in it. But for example, I'm planning my next Camino, which will be a little bit of a hybrid with my wife Pat, and we're going to walk the Camino Madrid. From Madrid perhaps to Sahagún, maybe not that far. We're then going to travel across to the Camino San Andrés and walk from Orense to Santiago, and then we're going to go out to Murcia and walk Murcia-Finisterre back to Santiago. Why a hybrid? Look, it's a long story. I'd like Pat to be able to experience a little bit of a more remote Camino, which they're quite different. So coming out of Madrid, heading north will be interesting. There's some different landscapes and a mountain range to get over. She would really like to get 2 more Compostelas, those certificates. She's got a couple already, but we collect them for family members who've passed. And you can ask for their names to be added to your certificate at the Pilgrims office. So she'd like to get one for a couple more relatives. So that's why instead of just walking one Camino, we're going to do this sort of rural stretch on the Madrid. And then we're going to walk from Orense to Santiago, tick, get a certificate. And then we're going to go out to Murcia, so she gets to experience, something very different, walking back from the ocean. And that will qualify for another certificate, tick. And so she can put a couple of relatives' names on those ones. And a hybrid's quite fun. You get to experience lots of different things. So I suppose where I'm getting at is, although I'm an avid planner anyway, this next Camino does require a little bit more planning. So the Madrid route doesn't have sort of the levels of accommodation and so on the Frances, so I'm planning stages. Pat struggles with anything over about 20 Ks. So I'm looking at a few stages there, how we might be able to break them up and how we're going to overcome, this stage, which is 28 Ks or whatever it might be. There's a 30 K stage. So I'm doing a little bit of planning around that. Confession, she's never stayed in communal albergues before, or she's never stayed in communal dorms in albergues. She's stayed in albergues, but in private rooms. So she's up for that. So again, I'm looking at sort of accommodation options so that, you know, I know, for example, on certain stages there are only albergues. That dictates our gear, so that helps me plan the gear a little bit better because we have to carry sleeping bags. I'm looking at some very lightweight stuff that we could cook a meal with. It's as simple as a little microwave cup that we can cook things in. So that sort of thing influences the gear you're going to carry, the particular route, the facilities along the way. So that's another reason why I'm doing a bit of detailed planning. And then because we're doing 3 different routes, I've got to work out how to get from Sahagún across to Orense. So I'm looking there at options of hiring a car, getting a train back to, or back down towards Madrid and then across to Salamanca and spending a day there. I've got to look at how we're going to get out to Murcia. I kind of know how to do that. There's a Mon bus service. So depending on the complexity of your Camino, I guess I'm saying is the complexity can require a little bit more planning. If you are constrained by the number of days you've got available to you, the budget you've got available to you, all those sort of things I think will lend themselves more to a little bit more detailed planning. Just looking at my notes there, why else do I do detailed planning? I really want to know how many Ks I'm going to be walking a day, or if not necessarily that, I want to know if there's days where it's going to be beyond my comfort level. So I have particular foot issues and things like that, and over about 25 Ks I really start to hurt. And so I'm identifying those days and what alternative options I might have. I'm looking particularly, I watch a lot of videos. I love watching Sarah Duma's videos, if you're watching Sarah. I've watched your one on the Camino Madrid a few times now. Particularly I want to look at where you stayed and places like that. So was it Ray and Rosa is the place, a little private Donativo albergue, which looks like a great place to stay. I don't want to miss out on those sort of things. So I read other people's blogs, watch their videos, and it helps not only from a planning perspective, but it kind of raises the anticipation and excitement for me, because I'm kind of looking forward to the things I'm going to experience on that particular journey. And then because I've got Pat with me this time, there is a little bit of planning that I'm doing prior to the Camino that I don't generally bother about if it's just me. But I'm particularly trying to identify overnight stops where maybe there's no open bars, there's no shops. I just want to know ahead of time whether we need to sort of pick up food to cook a meal, something like that. She's sounding a little bit like a princess, Pat, isn't she? She's not really, but I want her to have a good time too. So that's some of the reasons that I go into a lot of detailed planning. So different levels of planning. Absolutely, you can get away with almost zero planning. I would say the minimum you would want to do is to say, how many days have I got available? How many days or how many Ks can I comfortably walk per day? Therefore, I should probably start here. And that's it. That's probably the minimum. You've then got that sort of lightweight planning approach where maybe you're going to look at a couple of guidebooks, look at some online resources, start thinking about the route that you're going to walk, places that you might want to see. And then you've got that really detailed approach that I like to do because it's fun. And please, I know I've said this before, don't think that I hit the Camino, with this 20-page spreadsheet plan, which sits on my phone, and that I stick rigidly to it. I don't, not at all. The planning is purely to give me an understanding. So in the case of this next Camino, the planning is purely to understand when I've got to book the flights. So I'm going to walk 3 different routes, a couple of rest days, a couple of sightseeing days in Madrid. I need to know how many days the whole thing is going to take roughly, and throw in a couple of spare days so that I can book the flights. That's a bit of a challenge coming from Australia. So that's one reason to do almost a very rough day-by-day plan. The other reason is to just understand the route in a little bit more detail so that I can spot places that I might want to stay, any particular challenges. So I know there's one particular day which is going to be a challenge for Pat, so I'm kind of working on a plan B. If the wheels fall off, we can divert to this village over here and shorten the day a bit. So that's why I go through my detailed planning. But whilst that 20-page spreadsheet might be sitting on my phone, I really don't even refer to it while I'm walking. I'll tell you, my 20-page spreadsheet sits on my phone, kind of if I was going to refer to it. The plan that I follow day by day is this. I don't know if you can make that out. What this is, I use a website for planning purposes called Gronze. I hope that's the right pronunciation, Gronze. I'll put the link down below the video. And I got this great tip from Peregrina Linda, who I met on my last Camino, who actually gave me this one. And what she had done, she had basically copied and pasted the maps from the Gronze website. So these are the daily stages, and what she'd done is put 3 onto a page, double-sided. And she happened to have a spare one. Bit of an over-planner, Linda. Why would you carry a spare one? But she had a spare one, which she gave to me, which was great. And literally what I do as I'm going, I'm scribbling on it. So, you know, on this particular one, I've booked a Casa Rural, and so I've noted, you know, the phone number, so I can call them on the way. I've got little notes here which says, oh, you know, there's a big hill, there's a big valley, all that kind of stuff. So that's the extent of my planning when I'm actually underway. So, you know, Pat and I on our next Camino, we'll sit down at dinner and we'll look at this and we'll go, well, we're planning to go to this particular village tomorrow. We're still okay for that? You know, 20 Ks, you feeling all right? Yeah. And so, you know, it gives me the ability to sort of say, well, there's a place that I had nominally sort of identified that we might want to stay. We'll send them a WhatsApp message, try and book a room. There might be sort of notes related to the route and so on. So I'm not sticking religiously to the plan. It's very roughly on these maps, and it gets adjusted as we go, depending on how we feel, if we've got injuries or whatever. So there we go. I am starting to rabbit on again. So time to stop, Rob. So it's just a bit of a flavour of why I go into detailed planning, but you don't have to, the levels of planning that you might want to undertake. If you're a bit of a planning nerd like me and you really want to see the extent that I go to, I'm not sure I want to subject you to this. Maybe I don't want to teach you bad habits. You'll become sort of OCD like me. But if you really want to see the sort of level of planning that I go to and the spreadsheets and distances and all the rest of it, I'm happy to show you that on a video, but comment down below if you'd like to see it. And equally, no, and I won't show you. Great, well, thanks for watching again. Sorry, it's been a little while since I've got a video out. It's been really busy at work, and I've been planning like crazy for this next Camino. Really looking forward to that one. But there we go. If you've got any questions on planning, do comment down below, and see you soon. Bye for now.